at the entrance of Aida refugee camp, we hang the biggest key in the world. Key became the sign and the signature of the Palestinian refugees story. In 1948, when the people left them home, they don't know that they will be refugees. They thought they will be away for a few days or a week, month. When the war is over, they will go back. Only thing that they carry with them is the key. And that's why we built the biggest key and we put it in our entrance to be a reminder to the new generation, to tell them the story and the history where they come from.
The Palestinians call it the Nakba, the catastrophe. You can see the conflict in Palestine by looking at two main physical things. One is the wall, which Israel started building 15 years ago, and the second one are the Israeli colonies scattered all around the West Bank. You can determine the distinction between Palestinian villages and Israeli colonies by looking at the roofs. Palestinians have multiple black water towers. This is because they only get water a few days a week. On the other side, Israeli settlements have running water and they don't need the water tanks. The Israeli army controls all the main roads and all the main source of waters and all the main logistical places, de facto controlling all the logistics of the West Bank. The land that is kind of under the administration of Palestine National Authority is limited to the main cities and doesn't have like a territorial contiguity, meaning that to go to any places you always need to go through land controlled by the Israeli army. Wars are always divisive, but usually they have a logic, either of one side or the other side. Here the logic is not the same. For the Palestinians it's only one side, so they are not allowed to go to Israel. But for the Israeli army and the Israeli colonies, the logic is both sides. They can either go and come back from Israel, Palestine.
It's surprising how many artists decide to come here and to paint this very controversial wall.
It was about 11 years ago, in the summer of 2008, I came here to the wall and we started discovering some graffiti and an English guy called Banksy. Back then he was about to become famous. And that was like the point where we started to develop an interest and a passion for graffiti and street art. Now, 11 years later, we are back to the wall and now it's become like a canvas.
So we are in the outskirts of Bethlehem. Banksy 10 years ago popped by, created this graffiti, which is one of those that made him pretty famous worldwide. After painting the wall, Banksy decided to manage the hotel behind it, and it is very quirky inside. We'll definitely recommend you to pay a visit to the museum, which tells you a bit more about the history of the wall.